As a reminder, this session is being recorded for future use. And again, thank you for joining us today, and please show your sunshine hands for our presenter, TSDAR Organizing Secretary, MerryAnne Pierson. MerryAnne?
Hi, ladies. Like I said, some of you will find some of this just a little bit familiar, but I did try to cover e-apps because I'm getting a lot of questions about e-apps. Now, can you all see the screen? Are you seeing it, Jennifer? Okay. Welcome to the Registrar's Workshop. I put my email address up there because there's always questions afterwards, and you feel free to email me and ask the questions if you can't get them in this session. E-membership is required for each new registrar, and many of you have been registrars for a long time, just like I have, and you know what's there. But once you've been elected and the new officers have been submitted to national, you can get a password, and you go to the DAR website and log in as a member. So for us, we select Tennessee, chapter in there, your national number, and it lets you log in. There are lots of tools on e-membership. It allows you to do tasks that come with your new job. There's a prospective member screen that allows you to keep track of members that you're working with for your chapter. There's an update screen that allows you to update chapter members and chapter records. There's a report screen that allows you to see your pending members and follow the progress of their application. There's research in the GRS where you can have image access now to see how that will help with your applications. And you have documents that you can look at in the GRS, and you can actually see the images of the proof documents. One thing you need to know, you may not copy or screen capture images. If you're caught, you'll lose all your access, but you can order the documents that you need from National. So, e-membership access allows you to search for ancestors and see their proof images. It allows you to search for members. It allows you to search for descendants. And you can search under the descendant screen advanced and with additional information that helps you find people better. You can use Bible, there's a Bible record search place. You can search the GRC and books that are there. And then there's this e-membership update screen. And when you go up, when you click on the e-membership and you're in there, you'll see a button at the top that says update. And that allows you to manage your associate members, some demographics. Your chapter report will show up there for the year-end master questionnaire. You can do member updates. And if you've got new members who just came in, for instance, yesterday, you need to go in there and give the person member credit who brought that person to your chapter. So you can do all of these things, decease a member, resign a member, and update things. Only the regent of the chapter can update the officers, though. On the member update screen, remember only one person can be given credit for that e-membership, and it's not the registrar, it's the person who brings the member to the chapter. So you just follow the directions on the screen. It asks you to put in the number of the member credit person, and then it asks you to verify it. I know many of you know or are aware of that we have new genealogical guidelines. They were revised last August and released last August. They can be downloaded from the DR members site, or you can get them in the handouts that I had them post at the end of this session. There's three main parts. The first part is the guide for the chapter registrar, and it talks about how the form works and what you need to get and who can sign and all the technical details. There's completing the application is the second part, and proving the lineage, and it's got great clues of how to do that and great directions. And then searching for services in 4002. And the cheat sheet is the 8002 number that we put up. And it actually gives you clues as to how to cite the sources the way they want to see them. And there have been changes. For instance, you only cite census in the head of the household generation, not in any other generation. So you don't have to duplicate your citations anymore, which has made a big difference. And I have to think about that every time I do. So the genealogy guide part 1 has 53 page, 100, I think it says 153 pages, and I put a semicolon in there where it doesn't belong. This part 2 has 6 pages of contents. And I had to, the other day I was trying to figure out who had to sign a member at large's application. If, you know, she's member at large, she doesn't have a registrar. And I actually asked the question, and Sarah Supel answered me and said told me what page it was on, because I couldn't find it. And it's the state regent, in case all of you want to know that. And since some state regents are not genealogists, I recommend that the registrar or a registrar, or actually told this lady to send it to me and I'd review it before it went to Cecile. So the current dates, formatting, the current application date is dated July 2019. If you're using an older version, get rid of it. It is not going to work, and they will send it back to you and tell you to put it on the right one. That happened to me once already. The prospective member really isn't the person who should be contacting the genealogy department. If you have questions, or you have questions about the application, the registrar should be doing that asking, and these are the places that you can ask. Please note that because there's only 25% of the people working in the office in the entire building, that the dates that they're showing for what days they're reviewing applications is way off. They still have bins of mail that they are opening, and it gets asked every week on one of the Facebook pages about why are there so many differences in the dates and why it's not working. So be patient, they're getting to them. They actually did a fantastic job this month and got so many of them approved that really they just gotten open. They're really going fast. They're trying to make this as easy as possible for all of us, and we know that that's difficult. You know to sign it only in black ink. Please do not use any other color. They'll send it back to you. The 5 officers who can sign the application are the regent, the registrar, treasurer, first vice, and the recording secretary. They have to be current officers, and make sure that your current officer list has been sent to national, because sometimes that doesn't get done when the chapters have new elections. And right now, we aren't requiring endorsers, but when the time comes that we have to require an endorser, please make sure it's a living person. You can laugh, but we had 2 sent back because the people who endorsed them had died in the meantime. Okay, the new application, the only real difference is that it says biological child of, and page 3 has a few changes. So this is what page 2 should look like. If you look at the formatting, it's got the date by day, month, and year, and day, month, and year. You do not have to put 0, 1 if it's the first day. You don't have to use the 0 at all. But you need a complete place and birth date, or a complete place and death date for each person in each generation. You know, sometimes you can't prove these things. For instance, like on this page on generation 9, nobody could really say what day she was born, so we just left that blank, and it works. Sometimes you can't prove husband or wife, and you have to leave it blank, so you put an X there. Or if you can't prove their maiden name, you put an X there. I went too far. Hang on a second. I can't see any of you, so I'm only seeing Jennifer up in my corner, and I'm like, okay, am I going too fast? So the new citation form, if you got your birth certificates or death certificates or vital records, you don't have to say that. But if they came from a website, for instance, Family Search or Ancestry, you need to put the source of that birth or death record or census record, as you always did before. You can use Tombstone Photos from Find a Grave. What you can't use is a Find a Grave entry that has no stone that's legible. And that really makes sense. Cheat sheet RGG 8002 is in your handouts. It's the blue thing we handed out last year, or the green when we had them bright colors. It really makes a big difference for using citations, because you don't have to go in the Genie guidelines and look at every time. Now, if I ask you to raise your hands, I'm sure most of you have gotten an error, unless you're so brand new that you haven't sent any applications in yet. And I don't think we have very many of those people. Everybody will get an error at some point in time. All it is an additional information requested letter. Don't get panicky. Read the letter 2 or 3 times to make sure you understand what they're asking. I tend to get mad when I get one, and it's like, okay, back off and take a deep breath and see what happens. So follow the steps. What are they really asking you? Check the proofs to see if maybe it was just missed. One time I got an error on a letter that said I hadn't proven a father-son relationship, and I'd sent a court document that said dad had his son declared insane. So I sent it back, drew big red lines under, and put a note on top, perhaps they had missed that. And that's okay. Sometimes when they're reviewing these things, they do miss things. If worse comes to worse, ask your volunteer genie or the lineage research people for assistance. Sometimes it may take an analysis to prove this error. And they're a little technical, but we have lots of people all over the state who've done many of them and been successful. So, we always read each other's to try and get some support. If the volunteer genie or the lineage research assistance team can't help you, there is the Task Force 250. We have a list of people who serve on that task force in Tennessee, and we rather you send it to us first and let us take a look. If it needs to go to national to the task force, we'll help you get it there. So there's the volunteer genie team, there's the members of lineage research team, there's me, because I still do genealogy. It's my favorite part. And there's a lot of others out here with some expertise. So ask us first, and if we can assist you, great. If not, the task force is a tool that will work. And sometimes they find things that we just can't find. And the ladies on the task force have been selected for their expertise. I'm one of them, and I've had to send back up because I could not find a lineage line that worked. Elaine Campbell found one on one of the ones that I was working for. So we all work together to do this. So to find the task force, if you go to the DAR members website, it's under committees, and there's the task force committee heading, and the forms and the guidelines and the directions for getting task force help are all there. There's a couple of things, some of the requirements from the task force have changed. There's different permission letters, and it's really a permission to substitute a new patriot, and it isn't quite as difficult with the forms as it was. If you do have one at the task force, if you've got an error that's being worked on by a task force volunteer, if you don't hear from that task force volunteer every month, you need to contact them. We've had that happen recently where a task force person found a new ancestor, and the registrar got an error on it, and she hadn't even seen it after it had been sent into the task force. So she didn't know what they were talking about. They had some blurry images when they scanned them to get them up there. So if your volunteer isn't talking to you regularly, you need to get in touch with them so that they get in touch with you. There are additional solutions if we have to. There's analysis, there's DR application examples. And there's a service study example. They're in the RGG 4000 series guidelines. And they give great examples on how to write them if you need to. Okay. I haven't done an EAP, folks, and I'll tell you that right up front. There are so many restrictions as to how an EAP will work that for me, I can do it on paper faster. So Karen Jansky created the Ultimate Electronic Application Field Guide, which I sent with your handout so that you can download it for your use. Please read the instructions carefully, because there's a lot of things that you can't use one for. They can only be used for new member applications. It's best like when you only need to use like a granddaughter or a great-granddaughter or somebody you're trying to connect to an already existing app. It can't support large amounts of proofs being set up. It's not designed for that. The fewer the proofs needed, the better is the way they look at it. The applicant and at least 2 chapter officers have to be involved in this process. So you need a scanner, access to a computer, an email account, and high-speed internet. And if you don't have those 3 things, I still recommend doing it on paper. You have to be comfortable in working on a multi-section web-based application form, and you have to be able to scan and upload documents, including vital records. The applicant must be comfortable submitting her application fee by credit card via the payment portal. This has become an issue because many chapters, like ours, collects the chapter dues and the state dues, as well as the application fee, the $75 and the $42 national dues. And you can't get it back from national if they do all of that on their credit card. So we've had to be creative about getting them to how we got it paid. There's lots of questions about how the credit card use has been, and it's been discussed on the Facebook's Registrar's page. If y'all don't know, there's a great Facebook's Registrar's page. There's a lineage research page, and many of the genies are online. Karen Jansky and Lee Lloyd are 2 of my favorites. They often read their comments if you're asking a question, because sometimes you get answers that aren't really accurate from people doing them across the nation. You cannot use an e-app to do a new ancestor, a new child of a previously proven ancestor, anything that requires DNA or an analysis. If the ancestor's coded at all, and anything that requires a service study cannot be done on an e-app. So it's very limiting to me, I think. As I said, you can't use the e-app if you have lots of documentation for proof. And the formatting app rules apply, so you have to be comfortable typing it into the e-app, the same way you do it on a paper app. This is the directions that are in the ultimate guide. You need to know how to use build an app so that you can build the app, and then you have to create a locker where it gets saved so that three or four of you can work on it at the same time. And it always has to have 2 reviewers, like 2 officers that have to review it before it can go on to the next stage. And it's done by invitation. So don't send an invitation to people who don't have an existing ancestor, who have a coded ancestor. So it's very restricted. So it's easy, and you don't use it for members who want to be reinstated. I just want to sort of glance over these because it is in the handout, and if you're planning on doing electronic applications, or if you try to do electronic applications, you need to download the directions. We were working with a chapter in, not very far from here, and they were trying to do it, but they kept running into all kinds of difficulties, and neither Sarah Roach or I had ever done any app. So we're reading the directions along with them, but we still had a few problems with making it work. So you fill in all the things just like you do an application. And you have to have the build-in app that you built has to go in the locker, and they talk about in the directions how to do that. If you make an error, you have to delete it and start back over again. Keep telling you, I believe, guys, it feels to me like it's a lot more work than it needs to be because it's just so technical, and it still has some bugs in it. If you get on lots of times you'll see on the Facebook page that they're having trouble getting it to work or log in or scan. So the prospective has to enter some information into the fields. Then you can start helping her. Once she's received an invitation and made an account with her name, then you can help her. When it first came out, they wanted you to sit there with the person doing the application, and that just didn't turn out practical. Then there's the complex situation. I want to remind y'all, we are a lineage society, but adopted children can join DAR, or and if they go through their biological lines, their parents didn't have to be married. We don't care as long as we are going through the biological lines. And and adoptive parents never appear on the application. It's the biological line, and that's why they changed the page on page 2 and 3 to include that information. If you have technical questions, read the guidelines. It's page 15. It will help clarify some of that. Remember, you can't complete every blank on an application. And you don't have to. I know that we all strive to get the first 3 generations, but what about that woman who doesn't, whose birth certificate doesn't show who her father was, and if you're going through the mother's line? Put X's in that block. If you can't prove it, you can't use the line that goes through an unknown, but you can use a line that has unknowns in one side or the other parentage. And don't add anything if you can't prove it. Y'all know now that you don't have to prove marriages. So if you can't find a marriage, and you just leave it blank, don't say probably or maybe or occurred whenever. You have 3 resources if you're stuck. And there are a lot of volunteers out here in the state. Work with your other registrars. We all work together to try and prove these things and get it solved. The handouts include the ultimate guide to electronic applications, the source citation cheat sheets, the genealogy guidelines 4000 through 4002, and we put the PowerPoint up there. I swear I talk too fast, but we'll leave lots of room for questions. And believe me, I'm on my computer every day, so you can feel free to email me. Most of you have, if you're new, I usually reach out to you and help you if you need us. We'll do whatever it takes to get this job done. And now we're ready for questions, and I'm going to stop the share so I